You mentioned flat, and that brings us to my beloved Raiders, as I still sit in the T-shirt because I don't deserve to wear nice things. I still sit in the T-shirt I wore as I watched my favorite team come out completely flat. And this is not a new thing. This is multiple times over the last several years. I've watched the Raiders take on a losing team. They're bringing a backup quarterback, and they've lost that game. This is part of the DNA. I admit, Frank, I thought that Antonio Pierce, who we all acknowledge is really a motivational coach, would come out and would give these guys the fire of the gods that they needed to come off of a huge win against Baltimore and still have that pop. They did not have that pop. Max Crosby, also, we find out after the game, the extent of the injury, but was battling an injury that had him questionable, a high ankle sprain. We find out later he's going to have to manage that. Without him, it just wasn't, he was on the field, but he wasn't himself. In fact, there were no celebrations after big plays. You could tell that he was laboring through it. And without that energy, the entire team looked flat. And I kept watching this thinking, have I mistaken the energy of the Raiders as being Antonio Pierce when in fact it's just simply Max Crosby? And if that's the case, that's damning. So for the second time in 3 weeks, the Raiders don't look particularly good. They don't look particularly fired up. They got their butts kicked by Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers in just a thorough 36-22 is the final score. That includes garbage points that don't belong. And it was an embarrassing effort from the Raiders from the very first drive to the end of the game. It was one of those go get a paper sack, wear it on your head, and stop admitting you're a fan because this team just disappointed you to that level sort of games.
Yeah, I know. We'll get to, I do want to talk about the Panthers because we have to. Bryce Young. Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation. But I do want to talk about Antonio Pierce. We've been texting about this. Your take on the press conference afterwards. I watched the whole thing during the Sunday night game, and he was pissed off. Like, you could tell. But what is your take on it? Because I do have one.
Well, let everybody hear first. This is the soundbite that's sort of taking the world by storm. And this is a moment where he was asked by a reporter about the effort of the team. This is what Coach Pierce had to say.
That the team just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No, they didn't. I think as the game went on, I don't think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions, and we'll make business decisions going forward as well.
I mean, Frank, when you hear that, business decisions, let's be clear. He's saying that guys decided not to make tackles, guys decided not to put their bodies at risk. It was some of the worst defensive effort I've seen from the Raiders in the last couple of years. When you talk about bad angles, bad tackling, just consistently slow play, it was terrible. But when you make that comment as a coach, which I actually love, I love that you're just saying, hey, I saw it. You better do something about it now. Like, now that you put it out in the world, you better be benching somebody, cutting somebody, trading somebody. Like, you can't walk that back. Like, you can't say that, well, we handled it internally. Nope. You chose in that moment, AP, to handle that in front of a microphone. So now if you're going to have the big boy talk, you better back it up with some big boy actions in the next 48 to 72 hours. Otherwise, everybody's going to know that you're just talk. So I was surprised that he pinched himself in. Now I'm just sitting back saying, what are you going to do about it?
Is Antonio Pierce all talk? Like, I thought that, and we talked about this, he deserved to get that job. He deserved a shot at it. See, hey, you turn things around. These guys played hard for you. Let's see what you could do. But I wondered, did he just get the shot at that job because of a little bit of bluster? He says the right things. He knows how to speak to the fan base and fire them up. He does know how to, he's a former player. He knows how to speak to players, obviously. That's good first step. Like, that's a good foundation for you as a coach. Like you said, he's a motivational coach. You also do need to be able to manage games. You need to be able to figure out how your team doesn't get sliced up by Andy Dalton. I don't know if he's that good at those parts of the game. Is he really good in front of a microphone saying interesting things and getting his team fired up and relating to the fan base? Yes, he's absolutely excellent at that. Is he a good NFL football coach? I don't know that yet. And I wonder if it's just all talk with Pierce. And what is going to come, like, for you to like throw under the bus, like guys not making effort on tackles in the fourth quarter, I get that. Like, of course you don't want that. And that is bad for your team and the culture, blah, blah, blah. What about just getting blown out in the first half? Like, why not be dissecting why Andy Dalton at 36 years old was carving you up instead of worrying about guys making quote unquote business decisions in the fourth quarter? Like, I don't know. I just wonder where this goes for Pierce. He's kind of under this week by week referendum of who he is as a coach. We talked about punting on fourth down, and I criticized that. We disagreed a little bit about that. I do wonder where Pierce is going to go as an NFL coach. Like you said, you got to put himself out there with this one. You better make a move. Okay. Like, You're gonna call guys out like that. You should be calling yourself out too. Like you should be saying, I didn't have my team ready to go. He did a lot of talking, and I don't know if it's all talk with Pierce. We're gonna find out as we go. So early in the season, he'll get the full year, all that stuff. But I'm really interested to see where the Santonio Pierce thing goes.
I mean, you're right. They got carved up by Andy Dalton. They couldn't tackle any of the crossing routes that were in front of them. Every time somebody caught a ball in stride, it was wild to watch guys out of position. And then offensively, I have never in my life watched a football team consistently more incapable of picking up short yardage situations than this Raiders team. 3rd and 2, 4th and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, 3rd and inches, doesn't matter. You ain't getting it. You're just not getting it. And at some point, like if your offensive line is so putrid that you can't move the ball 1 yard with 2 plays to do it, I mean, you got to look in the mirror, and then you got to go to your play caller, and you got to go to your GM, and you got to say, what are we going to do? Because we can't keep doing this every week. Like there is some level of you just can't keep rolling that out every week.